come on. Hey, feel the rhythm. It's getting from the deepest of your soul. Now, use your senses, and everything will be easier than before. Keep on moving, funk is coming. Let yourself be, you'll become the star in this die. Spread your wings, fly to me, funk is coming.
And here we are with Mr. Nicholas Soutter. Am I pronouncing that right? First of all,
Yeah, you got it right. Yeah, you got it right.
okay, fair enough. What is it? Is it an English family name? Do you know where it comes from? It's
Yep, mostly Scottish. It's we also have some German roots, but the name, and apparently I've been told that there's like a castle in Scotland that's like a museum, and that our family technically has the rights to, but you have to live there to do it. And it's just like, no, thank you. I haven't gotten the call yet, but I've been told I'm going to. Okay, fine. But yeah, so mostly Scottish.
I think that technically I have some, and I kid you not, I have some lands in Russia. Technically, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's
Very
good luck with that.
technically, yeah. Well, anyway, so okay, so Nick,
Yeah.
you're one of the, well, compared to the people I've been talking with, with some exceptions, you're one of the, the newest faces on the conversation at large. I try to refrain from using the word community as much as I can because I hate it. I really hate it. Yeah, I can't stand it. But I understand that some people is fine with that. So I had a conversation with Matthew about it, and it's cool. He gave me his reasons. I just can't stand it. Your shows, the way you get into the fray, the whole thing, were not super religious per se. I mean, that wasn't the main topic, but you went more on a social and political angle, So what drove you to do these kind of shows? Well, first of all, I mean, why did you feel the need that you had to be, to make your own show? Was it because, other shows were lacking what you wanted to do, or, you thought there was a void? And why that particular angle?
That's a good question. I'm realizing I'm not sure I have an answer. I wanted the way In Time started was I just wanted to do an interview show, and I wanted to interview people. And there was a man by the name of Ansgar Odinson, and he was going to be my first guest. And I was going to interview him a few times, and lo and behold, he ends up becoming a co-host. And so I didn't. I didn't even want to join any community. I was asked to go on the Non Sequitur show because I had co-authored a biography or an autobiography of a psychologist who was a prison security guard at Walpole Maximum Security Prison for 10 years. Not a guard, sorry. He was a psychologist there, giving therapy to these horrible creatures. Kyle Curtis wanted me on to discuss prison reform, do that, and I felt like I was being offered a little bit like a slab of meat to Steve McCrae. I have a background in philosophy, and he's like, Steve, this guy's a philosopher. So Steve and I talked, we became friends, and eventually said, well, why don't you do some shows with me? I did some shows with him, and I enjoyed doing it, and he really encouraged me. So I finally decided I wanted to do my own show. In Time was going to be on my personal channel and just be an interview show, and it eventually grew to what it was. I like working as an anti-theist. I have a website called The Atheist Codex, and it's just a compilation of the common apologetics and counter-apologetic arguments. It had some social networking, blogging, all this other stuff. And I started sort of draining the funds that I was putting into that and putting it into the show, and it, In Time, just kind of grew into what it was. I've been a teacher all my life. I was a tutor in high school and college. I'm certified to teach English, social studies, and I teach computer science at both the high school and middle school level. So I like teaching, and I just said, you know what? Okay, why don't I educate people about nuance in politics and in history, things that people don't usually see or get, and try to correct misinformation in the news. And I got that I really enjoyed doing that, and that's where the show sprung from.
So you mentioned, and I'll go back to that, but you mentioned something interesting and passing by that, about these atheist codex that you had. Before going back to the core of your reply, I'm curious. Which are the most interesting arguments that you found, both for atheism and theism, in your research and while compiling the atheist codex? Was there something which struck you particularly interesting, or?
For one of the reasons I started the Codex was because I realized, in my view, every single theistic argument actually is a God of the gaps argument. And since a God of the gaps argument is one of the oldest gaps arguments in general, one of the oldest arguments in human history, and the most refuted, I was like, well, if you can say that every theistic argument is a God of the gaps argument, I think you're pretty much done. So that was sort of where I started with this. So God of the gaps and arguments from ignorance are the ones that I most rely on and enjoy in terms of counter arguments. St. Thomas Aquinas, the Quince Vitae, his five proofs are sort of classics, and I like, and even the Kalam cosmological argument, used a lot now, really draws from that, at least when used properly. But in terms of arguments that I found compelling for theism, I actually started out as a theist, so I was a theist for about 20 years. But the one that I found compelling, that I find very hard to knock down, is, does it really matter if you believe in God or not? And I think so long as you're not hurting other people, it doesn't. And if it makes you feel better, and if you're not putting your religious ideas on other people, telling people who they can and cannot sleep with, and yada yada yada, as long as you're not doing that, who cares? And it's like, I'm not sure I have a good counter to that, with the caveat that you're not telling other people how to live their lives. So that's the only one that I found sort of compelling, is, well, why not believe just for the fun of it? And I was like, well, short of that, I don't know why not. But anyways.
I think that's fair enough. I think, that there's a lot of people which found themselves on the same boat. And I remember, the common saying was, yeah, I mean, I'd rather have a Christian neighbor, which is a good person, rather than an atheist, which is a piece of shit. So I guess that, that basically, sums it up, right?
And we know plenty of atheist pieces of shit. And I've met, and I've met enough too that I think there are some people. I think there are plenty of people who were nuns. They just didn't care about religion, and they had no religious beliefs. And then they saw Christopher Hitchens, and was like, wait a minute, I can be mean to people and say that it's for a good cause if I just say I'm an atheist and go around proselytizing. Oh, sign me up. And they join Twitter, which is a cesspool, and go around attacking people. And it's like, these are not the people I want to associate with. And I also agree that religion is really, for the most part, extremely harmful. But it doesn't mean I agree with that mentality. So yeah, I've met plenty of atheists I don't like. And one of my best friends is a minister, a Greek Orthodox minister. So, and he's been my best friend since college, one of my best friends since college. So,
Okay, so let's back a little bit, to the kind of well, not topic, but the kind of arguments, things that you were saying before, mostly, the social and political issues, which, again, how do you think the U.S. is seen from the rest of the world?
My suspicion, and to the best of my ability to piece together, probably a bit as a laughing stock, a little bit as kind of a combination of pathetic and sad, and on occasion looked at with a little envy. But the envy's going to be on the fourth or fifth of the top five, and a good deal of how could they blow what they had when they had such a good thing going. I imagine roughly where Great Britain was viewed towards the end of the British Empire.
Do you think that's because of so what do you think are the causes which brought the U.S. to this state as you perceive it? Because it wasn't always like that, right? I mean,
Oh no, it wasn't. And I think envy used to be closer to the top. I don't think this idea that we're the envy of every other. No, every country had plenty of complaints. We were never, and envy was never the number one thing. Number two or three, maybe. But I think what brought it was a sense of invulnerability, a sense that all Americans are we are destined and by some birthright superior to absolutely everybody else. I think that attitude and what came from that attitude, which was, I do believe we have a responsibility to police the rest of the world. And as much as people dislike that, they actually secretly like it when we show up and rescue Kuwait and do all these other things. It's when we blow it, which is what we did in, say, Afghanistan. It's when we say our values are to spread squirrel, and we go off and go do something else, and we're like, hey, we don't mind bombing Afghanistan to oblivion, but build a school? Are you kidding? Who wants to build a school in Afghanistan? And that kind of attitude has given us a tremendous amount of scorn, and rightly so.
So, following up, on that line of thought, there's been a person which, well, okay, I'm not supposed to pass comments on that, There's been a person which used to be, let's say, on the spot on the internet, like, a couple of years ago, and he kind of remained that. And I'm referring to Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on the man?
I knew nothing about Jordan Peterson until about 2 months ago. And everybody's been talking about him for years. And I'd seen Cosmic Skeptic and Holy Cool, or no, it wasn't Holy Cool, but Cosmic Skeptic and someone else, and they were talking about Jordan Peterson, and he said, do a Jordan Peterson impression. One of them did one that was purportedly really good. He goes, how'd you do that? Well, I just did Kermit the Frog, and it turns out that I was like, okay, I gotta, and it turns out I had occasion to start to actually study what he's said and done, and study it specifically for a very deliberate purpose, not just listening, but studying it. He's fascinating, and I've spent a good deal of the last 2 months studying him, so I'm now actually reasonably familiar with his positions. I think he's very hard. I think when he speaks, it's very dense. And I think that is often mistaken for obfuscation or any number of, I think I can't listen to him really unless I'm paying attention. I can't just play it and listen. It's something that you have to sit and really study. I think he says a lot of things that when you sit and look at it are hard to argue against. I also see why he's polarizing, and I think I think he deserves a listening to. How much credibility and how far going forward I would really absorb what he says probably is going to take even more work. But I don't think he's casually dismissed, and he's not a nutcase. So he may be nutty. He's done some loopy things ostensibly, but he's extraordinarily intelligent, and he's brought that intelligence to bear on a number of issues. So I think he needs to be taken seriously.
Well, the most common critique to the guy is that, if I had to make the short version, is that the guy is sort of a Captain Obvious, meaning that, sometimes it's hard to come back to the guy because, if you examine what he says, say, okay, yeah, of course, but then what?
Well, I think there's some truth to. He went out and we actually just did a show on the gender pay gap, and it was influenced because there was another content creator that I'm a fan of, Nate the Lawyer, and he had been talking about the women's soccer team in the U.S., which got embroiled in controversy, and so we ended up discussing that in the gender pay gap, and I went to see what he had to say on it, and a lot of what he said is extraordinarily unpopular and reasonably accurate, actually rather accurate. So, stuff like that, that's not a Captain Obvious. He's sitting there going like, okay, look, when you break down the numbers, is there gender discrimination? Yes. Is that the biggest cause of why there's a difference in wages in the U.S. between men and women? No. Okay, if you would like to get filleted and lambasted alive, if that's something that you found interesting and an experience you would like to have, go to the U.S. and say that. And he's sort of learning that in other countries. So the stuff that I've seen is, or at least the stuff that I've remembered and retained was not Captain Obvious. But he does do. He's a conservative, so he's got some of the shoulders back and walk tall and do all these other things. Okay, good, good for you. And by the way, I don't think that's to necessarily be underestimated. But yeah, anybody can say that.
Yeah, I guess it's sometimes, the things that they say, it just stops you like a deer in the headlights, when he says, oh yeah, to fix your life, clean your room. Fuck off. Really, honestly, fuck off. right?
I agree, and that was my take. I've gained a bit more respect for it only because, and now people I know hit me with that, and one of the things he says is, and my office is usually a mess. My kids make fun of it because it is a huge mess from like right there
Right.
on, and
Yeah.
right behind the camera. Right, the girls come in and like, oh, we can tell where the camera goes because. And I'm massively disorganized. And he made a really good point. And he makes this point too, because when you listen a little bit more to that clean your room argument, and again, this is I've been fucking studying. One of the things that he said when somebody called him out on it is like, listen, you've got all these activists, again, especially in the U.S., and they're like, we're going to change the world, and we're talking about politics, and we have to do women's rights and trans rights and all these other things. And it's just like, okay, how much of your life do you have in order? And in part, he really does mean clean your room, but he also means that metaphorically. It's like, if you can't get your own fucking life together, and half of these millennials who are really pushing this can't earn a living, but they're like, let's fix this problem and that problem. Is like, how are you going to organize a fucking country if you cannot organize your life? And organizing your life starts with cleaning your room, keeping your life organized. So it cuts both ways. I think he gets a bit more credit than he deserves, but I understand. I'm sitting there going like, okay, yeah, organize. But it's a criticism that I've now used where I'm sitting there going, okay, there are these especially activists on Twitter, Facebook, social media, especially social media. Somebody will come out on social media and they'll say, this is how we fix the country. I was like, okay, what's your income? And I'm not asking that because I'm going to be impressed with, but if you're not making $30,000 a year, maybe a little, depending on circumstance, if you're not making enough where you're thriving on your own, how do you think you know how a country is going to function? I think that's a fair criticism.
So, okay, going back that route, most of the people which works in economics, they recognize that one of the biggest problems that there is, both in the U.S. and in Europe too, to a certain extent, is the collapse of the middle class. What do you think about that? Is it true in from your point of view? Is it something which has happened? It is happening. If it's a problem, goes up. How do you think that could be fixed in some way?
It is irrefutably the single biggest crisis economically facing this country and facing the rest of the world is the collapse of the middle class. It's happening in terms of industrialized nations. It's happening, I think, faster in the U.S., probably due to the influence of Austrian economics, other neoliberal schools in particular, starting especially with Alan Greenspan, who was a student of Ayn Rand, but of that whole objectivist and neoliberal thought. The reality is, it is utterly impossible to have any social structure where there's going to be just a middle class, and that's a great idea. The closest is Marxism, socialism, those ideals. There are reasons I think they're never going to work, and they can't work. Capitalism works reasonably well. Capitalism, the best is essentially what what's his name had said about democracy. It was Churchill said about democracy. I would say about capitalism, which is it's the worst absolute system there is out there, except for every other system. The problem is, okay, so basically the height of U.S. Power, I think, would probably be in about the 60s or 70s. Now, we had a 93% marginal tax rate on the wealthiest people. That would be Ford, what's his name, the industrialist. But you had middle class homes, single income earner families. You had people who you had a parent that could stay home with the children. You could afford college, all this other stuff. And the gap between what the person at the highest was earning in a business and what the person in the middle was earning was about tenfold. I forget what it is now, but it's a disgusting number. And one of the reasons is the more money you have, the money buys two things really well. First is the ability to evade the consequences of your actions. That's extremely bad, both from a psychological and from a sociological point of view. But nonetheless, it buys the ability to evade the consequences of your actions. O.J. Simpson taught a number of people this. The other thing that money buys is the ability to get more money easier. If you're poor, it's very hard to get $1. If you're rich, it's very easy to get $100,000 in your sleep. So that gap grows and grows and grows, and between the fall of Rome, the French Revolution in particular, the collapse of a great many societies can be directly attributed to the elimination of the middle class and to a growing number of people who felt that the only option left to them was to murder everybody in their way. I don't like that option. I don't think that's a good option, and I think if you don't want a country to resort to that option, you have to keep the disparity between the ultra rich and the dirt poor, which there's always going to be a disparity. It's always going to be a reasonable in size, but you have to keep it limited. And we have forgotten that. And I think that's going to bite us in the ass if we don't fix it.
I think there is a middle ground, between capitalism and socialism. Just replying to what you said and stuff like that. But that's basically what's happening in most of the civilized, countries, all over the world. Why do you think that the U.S. resists so much that kind of approach?
So first of all, that would be I would say that would be the Keynesian approach, and I think that's sort of the best that we've got is the Keynesian school. I think why do we? Oh, I don't think there's a simple answer to that. We do have a culture of rugged individualism, and the Austrian school, and let me actually, instead of just sticking to the Austrian school, just neoliberal economics in general. Appeals very much to that. You will be paid exactly what you're worth, no more, no less, and it's a very simplistic system. And I think the U.S. has grown very weary of nuance in our education, in our politics, in our economy, and we've gotten this sense of the world really should be simple, and we should be able to put it in a simple box. And I think neoliberal economics does that, and does that very well. And it plays to that secret belief in all of us that we are going to be president one day, or CEO one day, or all of these things, because we're all the hero of our own story. And so the heroes of all stories do that, and we're the hero of our story, so we'll be there. So I think there are many levels in which that works, and I think it's working very much against us. I think the only counter to that we have is education, and if that's true, then the U.S. is in big trouble.
No, the reason I ask you that, is because, I got to be super honest. From an external point of view, there are some aspects that U.S. society, it is, well, it's puzzling at best or incomprehensible. Specifically, no. There are two things that they always pop up, and I know it's a cliche, but it's true. And one of them is gun control, and the other one is that public health is not seen as a commodity. And again, I'm super generalizing here, so I don't want to put anybody on the spot. But most of the times, when you have these conversations with Americans, it blows my mind, because it seems to me that we're talking about the unsolvable problem that everybody else has solved, but and I'm just like, gun control. Yeah, there is a way. Everybody did it, but you can't. Why the fuck? And the same with public health. This COVID crisis, I think, has shown the shortcomings, of that kind of approach, where, health is seen as a commodity. If you have the money, you can be healthy, because, the state, the society per se doesn't recognize the fact that a citizen should be healthy. What do you think of that? I don't know, I'm being kind of a dick here, but it's
No, not at all. Not at all. You're absolutely. You're absolutely. I think you're absolutely 100%. I think there is no interpretation of the U.S. Constitution. It's not in the U.S. Constitution, for example, that you have the right to an attorney. It is in the original Soviet Constitution. You have a right to an attorney, and it is in the Constitution. It's not in the U.S. Constitution. That was interpreted. But if you can reach that from the U.S. Constitution, which I think you have to, I think if and this was of course not in the Constitution, but life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That's the Declaration of Independence. But nonetheless, I think there's no way to read the Constitution whereby you cannot reach the conclusion that you are in fact guaranteed health, at least as much to the basic ability of the ability to survive if you're going to be in this country. So, and there's been some we do have. I mean, you can go into an emergency room, and even if you can't pay for it, you will be treated. But there are so many problems, drawbacks with that approach. The day I bought the Atheist Codex domain name, I actually bought 2 domain names because I had come up with 2 arguments. I came up with one argument against religion that I thought was bulletproof, which was the idea that it's actually all a God of the Gaps argument. And I came up with an argument. And I did a gun control rant, which you probably haven't heard. It's a side of me you haven't heard before, and it was me attacking and challenging Wayne LaPierre to sue me because I called him guilty of negligent homicide for his work as the president of the NRA, and a bunch of other things. So I also bought the Gun Control Codex at the same time. I never got to it because the Atheist Codex just kicked me in the ass with how much work it was. But I think for the most part, you're pretty spot on with that. I think for me, a couple of things. My father spent a lot of time in France. He spent time in Russia, spent a lot of time in other countries, and practiced law in 7 languages. Practiced law. It's not that he just spoke them. He practiced law in 7 languages. There's an old saying, what someone who speaks 4 languages, quadlingual. What someone who speaks 3 languages, trilingual. Someone who speaks 2 languages, of course, is bilingual. And someone who speaks 1 language is an American. And I grew up in a household where we spoke other languages and we valued the understanding that comes from other cultures. By the time I graduated high school, I spoke Russian, Japanese, and Spanish. I forgot most of my French at that point, but I'd also learned French. I can still speak Russian reasonably well. Spanish, my Japanese is gone. But and I was very interested in absorbing the news from other cultures and was blown away by what the perspectives I saw. I don't always agree with it, but there are very valid criticisms. So if you want to succeed in life, the best thing you can do is give yourself the best education possible. That's why I run an educational program. That's why it's off-brand for us to, attack other people, attack other channels, and we do our best to avoid that. I want to try to help empower people, and I think that's the most empowering thing you can do. And for me, that was in part learning foreign languages and learning a bit about the culture, traveling abroad, and seeing these perspectives. So I understand your perspective, and I think it is largely accurate, and I don't know how to fix it. There is a percentage of Americans that feel just as strongly as I do about this, and it's, in my view, probably less than 10%, but I don't think it's less than 5%. But it's not enough to yet fix anything, and I don't think until we go through a great deal of suffering, we're going to bother trying.
That reminds me of a joke I heard yesterday from Jimmy Carr, the English comedian. He was talking about the fact, they say that, only 10% of the Americans have a passport. And said, well, I don't understand how how can be seen in a bad way. So.
Yeah. I'm gonna counter with Lewis Black. Who said, and I love this one. He was talking about George W. Bush. He said he's never even been to Canada. Even drunk on a bet, you get to Canada. So you have to go to other countries to see how things are done. I'm a writer too, and as a writer, one of the best expressions that I love is good writers borrow from other writers. Great writers steal outright. And if another country is doing something better than us, guess what? One of the reasons Germany lost World War II was because as they conquered more land in the Soviet Union, they found all these tanks that were built better than theirs, and Hitler refused to believe that was true. And rather than take the factories and leave them intact and just start building these tanks for the Russians, mean, sorry, for the Germans, they retrofitted them to build German tanks. And A, this cost them time and effort, and B, they were building inferior tanks. Take from other countries. So what Lewis Black said was, look, you got to go to these other countries and figure out what they're doing. You don't know what they're doing in France. You don't know what they're doing in other countries. They could be giving away shit for free. You don't know. You want to know what they give away for free in Canada? Health care. I thought that was, and there are problems with socialized medicine. Absolutely. Period. Yeah. Problems. But you know what? You can take a Keynesian approach to that too, in as much as, and that is still, I gave up an example once. Okay. You go into a bank and you notice everybody's really quiet and scared, and you don't know why, but you go up to the teller, and the teller won't talk to you, and you're like, what the hell's going on? And it turns out the bank is in the middle of a robbery. You're like, oh my God, the bank's being robbed. And, and then you go to the door, and you hold it open, and you're like, should I leave, should I go? And meanwhile, everyone else escapes. And you're just being a blathering idiot about it. And the bank robber takes you hostage. The FBI is going to show up. The police are going to show up. SWAT's going to show up. And they're going to negotiate for your freedom in this bank. You won't have to pay a thing for it. Yeah, you have to pay taxes, all this. We'll get, okay, fine. But you're not going to be paying out of pocket for the FBI negotiator who is trained to save your life, despite the fact that everybody else got out of the building and you're just a blathering idiot who couldn't figure out how to do it. The bank robber leaves his gun there, and you don't bother to take it or do anything like that. And it doesn't matter. Finally, they realize they're not going to be able to negotiate for your freedom, so they send a tank in through the back. They destroy the wall of the bank. You don't have to pay for the wall. You don't have to pay for the tank that loses a track and gets destroyed in rescuing your dumbass, who was the only person who couldn't get out of this building. That would be saving the whole world a whole bunch of trouble if you probably just got shot. Nonetheless, you're perfectly fine so far. Finally, you get out. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in damage. The bank's even on fire, right? And the insurance company's got it. You are fine. One of the officers is putting away his gun. It accidentally discharges and hits you in the leg. Now you've got a fucking problem, because even though it's not your fault you got shot, they're going to call an ambulance. You're going to have to pay $800 per pill for Tylenol before you even start to pay the cost of what it's going to take to fix your leg when you had nothing to do with getting shot. It was the officer's fault. That is the system in the U.S. today. Yeah. There's a reason every fire department has, not every, but most have an ambulance. They learn EMT skills. There's a reason there's a med kit in the back of most police cars. We used to have a privatized police force until a third of New York burned down. Sorry, a privatized fire department till 1798, when a huge swath of New York burned down because the fire department just sat there until a house that was insured caught on fire, and by that point it was too late to stop it. There's a reason those are socialized, but they are three legs of the same stool. You cannot socialize a fire department, socialize and I'm using socialize in the American sense, so don't fucking, I know you're probably cringing when I say it, but you cannot socialize two legs of that, fire and police, and not socialize medicine. There's a reason it's done that way. Anyways, end of lecture.
Okay, fair enough. So we are at the end of our conversation. I want to keep it short and sweet.
Why the fuck did you invite me on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been a challenge, man. You know, I just spoke with Alex Botton, bloody hell. I mean, I couldn't stop the guys from speaking, yeah. But anyway.
Probably works.
Well, I mean, I try to wait for, eventually we'll have to breathe, and this is where I step in.
Oh, you've never seen me try, but please continue.
Well, you left. I mean, you either have to breathe or you die. In either case, you will stop eventually. So, anyway.
Didgeridoo, circular breathing.
Right on. Okay, so the 3 questions. This is the part where I read you the 3 questions that I ask you to send me in order for me to ask you, right? So,
yes,
here are the 3 questions in the order that you sent me. What do you do in your spare time?
Usually gaming. I'm a big gamer. I actually ran a gaming. I used to develop games like in my spare time. Started when I was a kid. I would just make games on paper, all that other shit. And I've been making games and playing games forever. I haven't had a chance to play the enhanced edition of Mass Effect. I'm dying to do that, but also my kids will sit. I got a chair there, and sometimes they'll just watch me play, or if it's a multiplayer game, they'll play with me. But I'm a big gamer, and it's either that or fiddle with my computers and the electronics. But the gaming is usually, and I've gotten sucked into a couple what was the game I was just thinking about? I don't know. I'm a little distracted, I guess. But I've been playing Stronghold, which is like a really old game. I've been playing a lot of that with the girls. My girls love Borderlands 3. We play that a lot. A little iffy on the for their age, but they deal with it well, and they love playing that. So we'll just sit all of us in the office, and Neverwinter Nights on occasion, the Star Trek game, all sorts of. But I'm a huge gamer. I love playing games, and that's what I do when I'm not otherwise occupied.
Right. So the second question is, what's the role of family in your life?
Oh. I'm wondering why I actually added that. I mean, I know why I added that because I was going to think
Fuck
about
me. I mean, those are your questions, man.
Psychic, yeah. Well, so initially, quite terrible. My mother was unfortunately an extraordinarily difficult human being, far more than I have time to get into. But I stopped speaking to her as soon as I could. And so family has never really meant all that much to me. I don't care about, and I'd be told all the time, she's your mother, you can't stop talking to her. I was like, yeah, if she were your mother, you'd change your mind. And I was diagnosed with a number of difficult conditions. So I haven't really spoken to her since I was 20. And for me, family really didn't mean a whole heck of a lot. But I always knew I'd get married. Well, I knew I was going to have children. I assumed I was going to get married as well. So, and I really wanted kids. And so now I've got kids. And I will tell you, I have not always been as good the father as I had imagined I'd be. I don't think we ever live up to our own expectations. But it's been harder than I thought. But there hasn't been anything in my life that's been more rewarding. And I've learned more about myself watching them than anything else that has ever, and being married has been a huge part of that. So here I am, a family man, really enjoying it, which I did not expect because I didn't, that wasn't my life growing up. I came from a very, very broken family, trying to get away from everybody that was, I much preferred the people I could choose to be family as opposed to those I was born with. So, and now my girls, it's like we'll game a lot, we'll chase each other, and they're crazy. My eldest, or my youngest, I come down one day and I say, "What do you want for breakfast?" "The souls of my enemies." I was just like, "Really?" I don't know if I could deliver that, but that's. I think she was 8 when she did that, and I started to just put the crazy shit she says on Twitter. And she and Mouty are going at it now because Mouty had come by for a visit, and she started chasing me through the house, and he blocked her. And she's like, "How dare you?" She's like, "I'm Nick's friend. I gotta represent, man." So now she's like passing messages back and forth, and it's like, she's like, "Are you going to be talking to Mouty later?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Can you give him a message for me?" I said, "Sure. What's the message?" She goes,
"There you go."
And I was just like, that doesn't really translate on the phone, but okay. So it's there's never been anything more rewarding, and I think I'm very lucky. Really, I'm everything else. I do the show. I do all these other things. I do those because I want to. I could never do anything else other than I cook the dinners and I just enjoy. That's it. It's a huge part of my life, so I figured it was worth talking about.
Third and final question: do you have any regrets?
Oh boy. Speaking of Mouty, oh my God, I can't believe how many times he's going to get such a big fucking head over this. Speaking of Mouty, he likes to say, he has a phrase that he uses, "I'm filled with questions." Me, I am filled with regrets. And that's not a healthy thing. But neither is it healthy. I have so many friends, and I met so many people who sit there and say, "I don't have any regrets." That's really fucking dumb. I'm sorry, that's really fucking dumb. And I get the idea of not wallowing in regrets. And I get the idea of saying, okay, I regret that, but it's done, move forward. But so many people that say, "I don't have regrets in life," they use that as a shield to insulate them against the consequences of their own actions. Well, I'm not going to talk about it or think about it because it's in the past and I don't have regrets. Now, I go probably to the other extreme. Everything I've ever fucked up in life, which is quite a lot, I hold and keep dear, and that's not a healthy thing to do. But I do have regrets. But I did want to say this, and I think this is maybe the real reason I put this down. The things I regret, and this is probably the most important lesson I have ever learned in life, and I've learned it intellectually. I still don't live it nearly as much as I should. But I wish I had learned it when I was a lot younger. The real regrets I have aren't where I did something and fucked it up badly, and there are plenty of those. The real regrets I have are where I was too scared to try something I really wanted to try, even if there was a 90% chance it wasn't going to work. That's what I regret, because then you sit there going back saying, what if? And I don't think it hurts to at least hold on to some of those, because if you don't, you're not going to change that pattern in the future. So I have regrets. But of all the regrets, and I have a number, and on occasion, a litany of mistakes I've made are drug out somewhere. It's reasonably accurate on some occasions, less so on others, but nonetheless. But the biggest regrets I have were the chances I didn't take, and that's one reason I enjoyed doing this show, was because that was a chance, and I'm very glad I took it. But because that kind of thing actually is not very typical of me. I am new to the community. I agree. I have issues with that. I am new. And the reason isn't the lack of technology or lack of computer skills. It's just not the kind of thing I would, and that was a chance. And the reason I don't regret it is because I took that one. So I got regrets, but I try to keep them low, and I do that best by doing new things.
Okay, that's all we have right now. Do you want to plug in your channel? And if you want to send me links, just send me. I'll put it in the description of the video.
Perfect. I will send. The two channels I'll plug is In Time. That's youtube.com/InTimeShow. And that's an educational program. We cover news, politics, and culture. And we talk about actually just this kind of stuff. Interview a lot of really fun people, and have a lot of discussions, and also just cover what's going on in the news and try to give people a bit of a breakdown of maybe what's past just the surface layer. So that's In Time. And then the other one is just my personal channel. I haven't been putting much to that as often as possible, but I did a Trump rant, and you should go there. It was the first video I ever had that got 5,000 views. It got that in less than a week, and I think I'll send it to you. It's like I said, different side of me. The Trump rant, the gun rant, that's some just personal stuff is on my personal channel. I'll send you the link to both of those. But that's what I got going on.
Okay, Nicholas, thank you very much again, and I'll see you around. Okay, ciao.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Ciao, ciao.
If I didn't care more than words can say, if I didn't care, would I feel this way?